Is there things that you really liked about each other, and then those same things became challenging after getting married?
I mean, you wouldn't know. I age like wine.
The simple truths are vulnerable conversations on the everyday questions that emerge as the message of Christ and our culture intersect.
Whether you're a young professional headed into industry, navigating school, or simply somewhere in the middle, take your place in the conversation.
Joining us are the Hoskins. Michelle is an educator, passionate for empowering youth. Adam, the worship director for Sanctus Church. And they get real on dating and relationships, exploring honesty with self, individual wholeness, healing from sexual ties, and following Christ's example of love.
First off, I just want to say Adam and Michelle aren't strangers. They have been journeying with us from so many years.
Before marriage.
Before marriage.
Yeah.
They were part of our wedding.
Yeah.
We've seen them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're
I emceed your
you
wedding.
emceed the wedding.
I emceed the wedding.
Your wedding, yeah.
So, we have some history. Adam and I went staff together at GKM, and such a creative mind. Always inspired by him. And Michelle, even with Sarah at summer camp at
Sarah
some
and I
point.
were on staff too, okay? We had our own little staff.
Anyway, but they have been an inspiration for everyone around them, and their marriage as well has also been inspiring. Okay, so we're gonna get some gems from them today. I'm so excited.
Did you guys have a list of the perfect key attributes that you'd want in your perfect man or perfect woman? Was it like this uncompromisable list? Like, give me some feedback on that.
I came in with something, the big E, called expectations. So I didn't have a list, a nice clean cut list, but I had a lot of expectations that I did not realize I had. So a lot of things that I had built up from my past, or not things, a lot of expectations that I had built up from my past or my history or my relationships with, like, not even just like I didn't have any other dating relationships. So like family relationships, what I saw on TV, an expectation of what my relationship would be like based on what I saw. All of that impacted, so it wasn't the list, but it was kind of a list because it was these expectations that he needed to fulfill. And until I was able to recognize that that was just as unhealthy as a list that he could not fulfill because he's not perfect, like, it was trouble.
And we shut that down quick. Early. One of the things that, like, the mindset that I want to keep in my life is this one of just like, I've never done this before, and so therefore, let me just be a student at it. You know what I mean? Like, let me just learn all that I can and fail and make mistakes and stuff.
You may come with the list, but again, I'm seeing in so many ways, expectations are actually what's ruining the relationship because you don't realize, like, maybe you set your list aside, or you said, okay, they don't fulfill this part of the list, so it's okay. But then you don't realize the expectations that are underlying that will bring in some tension or frustration or disappointment because you think this is exactly how it should be, almost to the point that you're not even communicating it. You just like, it just should be that way, and then it's not, and then you're like, what the heck, right?
And expectations choke growth, like growth in individuals and growth together. Like, it just chokes all of that because you need it to look a certain way, and when it doesn't look a certain way, you get all bummed and everything like that. Instead of actually like understanding the beauty of the moment that you guys are both in, and growing through that, and allowing the Lord to really work in your life in unexpected ways. You know what I mean?
Some of you are looking right now, and you're not married. You're dating, or you're looking for someone. And you're hearing marriage mightn't be all that you think about. There are good things we bring into marriage and bad things we bring into marriage. I want to pose this to you guys. When you guys were not married, you were courting, is there things that you really liked about each other, and then those same things became challenging after getting married?
I mean, you wouldn't know. I age like wine.
He had that in his back pocket, ready to come out.
He did. I feel like Jensen set him up for that. I'm so annoyed.
What guys do?
Touches.
Yeah, that's what guys do. That's what guys do.
So
I'm just kidding. I think the better question for me would have been like, there are some things that I thought that maybe were like smaller things that I'm like, that's not a big deal. That like that now I really have to learn how to manage, you know what I mean? Like within myself and with one another. And then I'm sure like Michelle probably has a list of those things of where she probably thought they're like, it's probably not a big deal kind of thing to like, then you live together and you have a child together and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And suddenly, you know, the small habits, and I'm talking about myself here, like the small habits, like, you know, grow and extrapolate and become amplified. And I'm sure are hell annoying for
On top of raising a child, on top of whack sleep schedule. And those are good points.
Yep.
What's the deal with honesty in a relationship? Talk to us.
I think one of the things that we talked about in honesty was this idea of not just honesty with each other, but honesty with yourself. That's been, I think.
You totally stole me.
Sucker! Anyways, kidding. No, but honesty with yourself, which has been a big area of, I guess, room for sanctification for us. Do you want to elaborate then? You can go ahead.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, like, if you don't have honesty in a relationship, you don't really have a functioning relationship. You have a facade, right? Like, you have something that you're trying to prop up all the time, and you're trying to, like, I don't know. I just think, like, a dishonest relationship is one that just has, like, so much more work than is necessary because you're trying to continually be or say or do something that you're not, you know? And I think that, yeah, like, it's big, like, you know, what Michelle was saying, like, honesty with your, like, with each other is key. And I think, like, that's the obvious answer, is that, like, yeah, like, of course, in a relationship, you have to be honest with one another. But I think the more difficult part about it is, like, honesty with yourself, like, honesty in, like, knowing yourself and knowing your faults and knowing your weaknesses, and not thinking that you're the righteous one in the relationship and that the other person is always the one at fault and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, like, what? Man, I'm always the one getting reamed out, so I'm just real with myself. Like, yeah, I did it. I did it again. You know?
That has been, though, something that I appreciate, because I think we've established, and not because we're any righteous, holy, perfect marriage at all, but just we've been able to recognize that the value of, like, oh, yeah, I messed up here, I better just own this one. Or, hey, this is where you're being proud. And, like, it may take a few minutes to swallow that, but then eventually we come back and say, like, okay, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I have a question. You know, you bring a really good point about being honest with yourself. That's not an easy thing to do. And how do you go about in your relationship or a hypothetical relationship? How do you create an environment where people could be honest about themselves, their shortcomings or things that they're working on? How does that work?
One of the things we've had to do is a few things, but I'll keep it short. One is, remember, like, we're on the same team. Yeah. So when I'm honest with myself that I've been rude or something, I was a little bit rude this morning. I did apologize. When Too soon? So when I recognize that, knowing that my owning that and apologizing is because this is my teammate. Yeah. Also, being able to remember that, like, okay, like, I messed up, but he's not perfect either, so it's okay. Yeah. Like, you know, like, if neither of us come to this perfect, so it would be such a lie for either of us to think we couldn't own up to, you know, any area where, you know, there's a flaw or something, right? And so, you know, being honest with ourselves in that, is so critical.
You know, I used to think when I was dating Sarah, we used to look at marriage like, oh my gosh, we can't wait to get married. Or, you know, we'll be dating, it'll be the end of the date, and then we regret, oh, we have to leave now, we have to get home, you know?
Yeah, we jump on the TDC.
To our separate homes, right? Yep. And then we would get on the phone and be like,
and then be on the phone all night.
And then be like, oh, I can't wait till we get married, so we just wouldn't have to leave.
What's so funny? We did the same thing.
No, I know we did the same thing.
Like, I mean, I was also looking forward to doing groceries every day. And I'm just
Sarah, who likes groceries?
No, but we sort of have this. We're gonna be when we get to the destination. We're gonna be fulfilled, right? And some of you might be look at marriage. You're dating right now, and you look at marriage as, but when we get married, things gonna be good. I could have some lovely time with my wife. I could, we could be in the same house. We're gonna do this together. We're gonna have this design a place, and all these notions. Like I don't know where they come from. Maybe media. But then you get married, and you realize that something's a little different. Some of those dreams, maybe they happened the way that you were thinking about them, but there was something that was not fulfilled, right? And I just want to enter this conversation about where do we find our fulfillment?
To go deeper in that, and answering your question, is understanding that, one, you have to be so careful with marriage, especially in dating, that it doesn't become an idol. Because, and I learned this from Mark Driscoll, so I do have to give credit here, but what you idolize, you will often eventually demonize. And so you'll idolize marriage and then get there, realize that it's very sanctifying and a lot of work, and great, but definitely a lot of work, and then start to demonize it and hate that it didn't fulfill what you thought it should. So that's one thing is that, we have to be so mindful of that, and recognize that truly, I cannot communicate this enough. Jesus has to be your fulfillment. You will not be fulfilled by your spouse. I say that as a Christian, but I say that as somebody who is living it every single day. Adam cannot be my fulfillment at all. He is such a joy and such a blessing and a gift, and he brings me much joy. And there are many ways that he does fulfill me, but he cannot be the sum of my fulfillment at all. He cannot. It has to be Jesus. And why? Because he's not perfect, 1. 2, he doesn't know my heart. 3, he's not perfectly forgiving like Christ is. And I mean, he's extremely forgiving, but he's just not Jesus. And so, Jesus has to be your fulfillment.
He's just not Jesus.
Yeah.
That's a big statement.
Yeah.
That is a huge statement.
And it means a lot. It means so much more than it sounds like. It sounds like a Sunday school answer, but it's for real.
I'm gonna throw out one for everybody that's not married yet. And especially for people that are single and thinking that marriage is gonna be the epitome of things and thinking that especially for those people that are pursuing other people, the most attractive thing that you can possibly do is be as whole as you can possibly be. That's the most attractive thing ever.
I think you need to say that one again.
Yeah, the most attractive thing you could possibly do as a single person is be as whole as you can possibly be.
In Jesus, by the way.
And no, let me qualify that, because you don't get whole people outside of Jesus. Right. So there's no be whole in it's just being a whole person, which is through Christ. And I think that when a whole man and a whole woman come together, that it doesn't. And when I say whole, I also don't mean this whole independent, I don't need a man, I don't need a woman kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's not what I mean by being whole. I just mean knowing and understanding yourself. And there's this element of self-mastery through Christ and being in tune with the Holy Spirit as to who you are and who he's making you to be. Yeah, I think so many times I've seen young people who are pursuing another person, who are throwing themselves at other people, because they think that this is going to be the thing that that completes them and that makes them, it brings them into who they are supposed to be. When it's no, and to be honest, on a physical scale, I think for some people, I know as a guy, to see a girl that's really pining at it, it was just one of those things for me when I was a single guy that was that is not attractive. You know what I mean? I one of the best things that I loved about Michelle was that she, at least she put on that she didn't care that much about me. You know what I mean? That it was this element of there's element of you're there and you're cute, but I got my life and I got my things that I'm doing and I'm working through this stuff, and you know what I mean? And if you're gone the next day, I'll be okay. You know what I mean? I'll be, you know, but if we're going to do this, like, let's do this together. And that was one of the most attractive things about Michelle.
Adam and Michelle, we're going to talk about sex.
Bring it on.
Everybody's eyebrows just started bring it on. Is there a spiritual attachment that happens during the act of sex?
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. 100%. I mean, the Bible says, and they were one. Like you were actually joining. Just think of like the story of the woman at the well. And Jesus said, you're right, you're not married, or you don't have one husband, you have 5. Yeah. And, you know, how does she have 5? How can Jesus say she has 5? Well, there is a tying of souls when you are with your person. And again, to Jensen's initial, this is not a condemnation. This is not a shaming of anyone who is in it, struggling with it, has done it once or 1,000 times, whatever. This is just what it is.
Just want to underscore, okay, we talked about how the sexual act is an act of making people one. Mm-hmm. And you said there's spiritual ramifications to it. Yeah. But if you think about it, it's so true, because sex makes you not just one in the flesh, but you're actually tying together your soul as well as your spirit. And if, again, just to underscore this again, if you are caught in some sort of sexual addiction or cycle, please reach out. Jensen and I are not, none of us here are perfect people. Mm-hmm. And we've battled with this. There's no discrimination, there's no judgment, there's no condemnation against you. But we understand what it's like to have been in that place of shame, in that place of humiliation, where you feel like this great chasm, like Adam had mentioned earlier, between you and God. That's a lie from Satan, and we're going to expose that right now. Yeah. That is a lie from Satan, that you cannot ever make it back to the other side. You can't go back into the grace of God. That's totally a lie. The Lord is so sure, and he fulfills his promise when he says, when you draw near to him, however as you are, the only requirement is to be surrendered, is to be broken, is to be contrite in spirit. And he'll draw near to you.
And nothing can separate you from his love.
Exactly. The hardest part is, you think the hardest part is just saying it. After saying, confessing, the Lord will work it towards your favor. You will be redeemed. That is just how scripture works. That is his promise to us. Yeah.
We've talked about some really amazing things. Thank you again to Adam and Michelle. Your honesty, your transparency, your wisdom, even just your example of pursuing Christ for yourselves and then with each other is just been a blessing.